Barbecuing is a popular pastime in the summertime, but it's important to take some safety rules into consideration. Just remember, clean, check, and test. Make sure the barbecue is clean when you open it up at the beginning of the season. As we open up this, you can see a little critter has actually dragged a little nest in there. Hopefully he's not there anymore. But make sure there's no nests or little critters haven't put any nests in there over the course of the winter time and the off season, and underneath the burner as well. Also, so just make sure underneath your burners there's no buildup of grease underneath there that can ignite and spontaneously ignite as you're barbecuing. It's a good idea to give it a good clean at the beginning of the season. So as you're cleaning the barbecue, you also make sure your burner ports are nice and clean. If these aren't cleared out from rust or debris or spider webs, it creates a yellow flame. You want a nice blue flame with yellow tips. If you got too much of a yellow flame, it can actually poison your food. So you want to make sure that these are nice and clear. As well, people forget about the venturis that make their way to the burner. You want to make sure there's no buildup of any spiders in here or critters in here or spider webs. You want to make sure these are absolutely clear as well. So the next rule is check. You want to check to make sure your barbecue is on a non-combustible surface. You can see here we have a cement patio, but if you absolutely have to put it on your deck, just make sure you have you purchase a non-combustible surface that you can put underneath the barbecue. That way, if any grease drips down, it's not going to catch your deck on fire. As you want to make sure you have the proper horizontal clearance from your structure, such as your house or the railing of your deck. Make sure you got at least a meter clearance away from things that can possibly catch fire. So as you're checking to make sure you got your clearances and you're on non-combustible surface, also make sure you check underneath for any critters or any possible spider webs that might be getting in the way. Look at the spider webs underneath here. So there's quite a bit. This needs to be cleaned off as well. Do a visual check of your hose to make sure there's no cracks that can possibly leak the propane out. Check. Now we're going to talk about test, but before we test anything, we have to connect the tank to the barbecue. Some people actually leave the barbecue on the ground and connect the hose down here. It's not a good idea. You should always connect the tank to the barbecue first, and then connect the hose. That way you're not pulling the barbecue away and possibly damaging the hose. So at this point, we're going to connect to the propane tank. And we're going to check for any leaks. So we make sure the burners are off to the barbecue, and we turn on the propane. And you shouldn't hear any leaks at all. And now we're basically testing now. You're going to take a 50-50 solution, water and soap, and just paint the hose up and down, looking for leaks. And on the valve as well. And look for any visible bubbling. If there's no bubbling, your hose is still fine and doesn't need replacing. The most important thing is to make sure your lid is open. You want to make sure there's no chance of building up propane within the lid. If you keep your lid closed and you light your barbecue, the propane can actually build up in there and blow the top off your barbecue, which isn't good. So now that the top is open to the barbecue, the next step is opening up your propane. You've already tested the hoses to make sure there's no leak. When you open up your propane tank, you don't need to open it up completely full. All you really need is a quarter to a half turn to open up your propane. That's going to deliver enough propane to your barbecue. So lid is open, propane is on. Turn on one of your dials, just low to medium. And if you've got a nice igniter, this always works really nicely. Once one side's lit, then you can start the other one. If you don't have an igniter, your igniter isn't working and you're using a barbecue lighter, it's important to realize that there's lighter fluid in here. Don't leave this around the barbecue. Make sure there's absolutely no combustibles around the barbecue that can start fire. So you leave this close to the barbecue, it can possibly ignite. And we just had a situation in Barrie where the barbecue lighter ignited and the lighter fluid went down to the deck and caught the deck on fire. So now that we're done grilling, it's time to shut her down. Make sure your lid is up during this process. You want to shut the propane off first because you don't want to trap any propane in the lines. So we want to shut the tank, the propane, the flow of gas to your burner. There we go, we've shut that off. Make sure the flames are out. Once the flames are out, then you go and shut off your dials. So when you're transporting propane, certainly make sure the dust cover is on. And definitely make sure the valve is closed. As well, make sure it is your only errand to do. Don't put it on a list, a 10-item list on your honey-do list. Make sure it's the only thing you're going to do at that particular time. When you're putting the propane in your car, make sure you put it in a spot that you can visibly see it. You don't want to put it in the trunk where you get sidetracked and you forget about it when you're doing possibly other errands. You certainly want to make this your only errand at this time to do. So put it in the front seat so it's visible and you can see it. Put it up against the dash and then take the front seat and wedge it up against the tank to keep it secure. That way it's in an upright position and the tank's not going to move on you too much. When the barbecue season is over and you're shutting down your barbecue, it's time to store your propane. You don't store it in the garage or in a shed. You want it outside in a well-ventilated area. Storing it inside is not only a danger to yourself, but it's an undetected propane tank during a structure fire can be an extreme danger to firefighters and have killed firefighters in the past. You want to put your tank outside in a well-ventilated area, not enclosed inside of a garage or a shed. We get a lot of questions in the fire service related to propane and barbecues on balconies. The rules with propane and barbecues on balconies is if it's in your rental agreement or your lease agreement or your condo agreement that you're not allowed to have them, you're not allowed to have them. Don't call the fire department and start to get us to back you up and having one on your balcony. If it's in there, you're not allowed to have it. You're not allowed to have it. It's just plain simple. If you're allowed to have the barbecue on a balcony, you want to make sure you have a meter clearance. TSSA, the Technical Standards and Safety Authorities, say you need a meter clearance from openings. So when you look at these balconies behind me, if you have a barbecue on the balcony, you can see with a meter clearance, you're just not able to have it because you're not going to get a meter clearance in between a balcony and a window or a door